Welcome, folks. So glad to see people joining us today. I know folks are getting connected, and we're really looking forward to the presentation today and hearing questions from you all. So this is the 20th Children's Advocacy Day event. We've expanded that to a week recently, and I'm just wondering how many folks have participated, or how many years have you all participated in Children's Advocacy Week or Day? You can drop that in the chat. I'm really curious to see, do we have like super experienced folks? Do we have first timers? Is it a mix? So go ahead and drop in the chat how many Children's Advocacy Day or how many years you've spent engaged in Children's Advocacy Day or week. We got a first timer. Ooh, a couple of first timers. Look at this, 7 years. That's amazing. Wow. Okay. We've got like a pretty good range of experience. We're going to make sure that everyone is walking away feeling really good about their involvement and what's to come this week. I know that we're really excited to have you all joining today. And I think we can go ahead and start heading in the direction of beginning the program today. So I'm Shannon Moody with Kentucky Youth Advocates. I really appreciate you all being here today. Like I had said, it looks like we've got a couple of first timers and a couple of other folks who have been really engaged over the last several years. So we're glad to have people continuing to come back. We're also glad to have new folks come into the fold and learn and hopefully teach us some things as well. We want to thank you all for joining this Blueprint for Kentucky's informational session today. Obviously, this is a virtual session. We will have virtual and in-person opportunities throughout the week during Children's Advocacy Week. Today, we are going to learn specifically, though, about more about the Blueprint for Kentucky's Children agenda and policy priorities. And my colleague, Alicia Watley, is going to be spending some time giving you all some updates on that. We do ask that you please stay muted during the presentation, and we will welcome questions or comments during the discussion portion later. Also, feel free to drop questions in the chat as you go so you don't forget, but please go ahead and stay muted until we're ready to take questions and have a discussion. So I will turn it over to my colleague, Alicia Watley, and she will take it from here. Thank you all.
Thanks, Shannon. Hi, everyone. As Shannon mentioned, my name is Alicia Watley. I'm also on the policy team at KYA and help with coordinating the Blueprint for Kentucky's Children. So I'm going to be going through just a quick overview of what is the Blueprint, especially for those who are maybe a little bit newer to KYA. A couple of updates on what's happening, where we are in the legislative session as of today, and then what's going on with all of our Blueprint items. So we'll do a quick overview of what is on the Blueprint, each item that we have listed as a priority for KYA this year, and then where that sits currently in the legislative session. And then we're also going to talk a little bit about the state budget because it is a budget year in Kentucky. So that's something that a lot of folks maybe are not as familiar with some of the specifics on how that works. So we're going to cover that as well, and give you some ideas of things that are maybe action that you can take leaving the session today and throughout the week as you engage with other advocates and with state leaders. So we'll start with just an overview of what is the Blueprint. So the Blueprint for Kentucky's Children is, it's really a coalition of folks from all over the state. We have nonprofit, public, private organizations that come together with some common goals around what's good for kids. And so we think of the Blueprint as being 3 pillars, and that is thriving communities, launch strong families launch successful kids, and successful kids launch a prosperous future for Kentucky. So those are the kind of the 3 buckets that we're looking at under the Blueprint. And then I also want to just remind folks where we are in the legislative session. This is day 14, I believe, today of 60. So there's 60 working days in the session. They will wrap up in Frankfort around April 15th this year. So we are moving along, but still a lot of time to go, lots to still happen. Lawmakers are currently considering already hundreds of bills that have been filed. Many addressing kids issues and a lot that don't. So there's tons of bills out there. KYA is doing a lot of the lifting on analyzing those and hoping to let you all know what's important for kids, especially when we have a Blueprint item that's filed or an agenda item that we're working on. And in addition to just looking at all those hundreds of bill proposals that are out there, our lawmakers are also crafting a 2-year state budget. So by April 15th, we will have a new 2-year budget that will fund everything across the state over the next 2 years. So what we're going to do now is walk through all of the items that are on the blueprint this year. So some of you all might be really familiar with this if you've attended some previous sessions in the last couple of months or checked out our blueprint online. And this might be a little bit new to you. So I'm going to try to do a quick overview of the item and then talk a little bit about what's happening right now in the legislative session with each one. So we can go to the next slide. And the first one we have here is a priority for child safety and well-being at school. So you can see here, Kentucky can reduce the risk of sexual abuse and exploitation and increase student safety. And so this is by ensuring that we have appropriate disclosures and checks happening and training for potential public and private school employees. So folks who are interacting with kids at school are going through checks and procedures to make sure that we don't have any kids that are at risk, and that folks who maybe have had inappropriate contact with students in the past are not able to refuse to or not disclose that and move to another school and put other children at risk. So the current status of this priority is that we do have a bill filed. Representative Tipton in the House filed House Bill 275. So that's really exciting to see that this has been filed, and it actually has got some movement. Tomorrow morning, this bill is on the agenda in the House Education Committee. So that is at 8 a.m. tomorrow morning. If you want to get up bright and early, you can tune in. Most every committee meeting is live streamed, so it's always available for folks to watch online, or those meeting rooms are also open if you want to go and be there in person. I think several KYA folks will be there supporting this bill. Very exciting that that's happening tomorrow morning. And then a little bit about what happens next. So if this is a House bill, it's in a House committee tomorrow morning. If this passes out of the House committee, then it will go to the House floor. And if it passes the House floor, then it repeats the same process in the Senate. So it'd have to go through a Senate committee and the Senate floor before it can go to the governor. So that's just a bit of a refresher on what happens with bill process, but we're really excited to see that one of our blueprint items is in committee tomorrow, and we are definitely encouraging folks to call your House member and talk to them about why they should support this bill. Again, it's House Bill 275, because if it passes committee tomorrow, it will be going to the House floor and every House member will have the chance to vote on this bill. So that's some action items for advocates on this one. And I think we can go to the next slide. So the next one we have here is around some supports for stable housing for kids and families. And this is all around changing some processes for evictions. We're looking for some changes to state law that would make it possible to expunge evictions from a family's record after a set amount of time without additional filings. Also sealing eviction filings that don't result in an actual eviction. So if it doesn't go all the way through the process, sealing that filing. And then also prohibiting minors from being named on eviction filings so that we don't have young children who are impacted later in life by a potential eviction on their record when they try to get a rental property of their own. So there are a couple of bills that address this issue currently filed. We have House Bill 71, which comes from Representative Cole Carney. And that one, I don't believe as of today was assigned to a committee. And then we also have Senate Bill 34, which is a much larger bill that has a ton of different issue areas in it and lots of different stuff. It's got some really great items for kids and supports for kids and families in it. If you're interested in Senate Bill 34 to see what else it includes, we do have a blog on our website right now that kind of takes a deep dive into what is covered in there because it's a huge bill. But part of it does address this eviction issue, and that comes from Senator Westerfield, and it is currently assigned to the A&R committee, which is the Appropriations and Revenue Committee, because there's a lot of budgetary items in there. So they would definitely want to take a look at the budget items that are listed. So what's next on this one is just us kind of waiting to see when this bill would be on a committee agenda. So we're hoping to see it actually being heard and talked about in the coming weeks. And again, this is just an opportunity for folks to reach out to your state representative or senator and talk to them about why this is an important issue. We can go to the next one. And then another housing stability item is to establish an interim joint task force, which means that we would have Senate and House members meeting in the interim, which is in between the active legislative session in the summer and fall, to have a task force to really take a look at Kentucky's housing landscape. So we would be looking at items in terms of accessibility of what's out there, unit availability, affordability for folks, all kinds of different items, to look at the housing crisis that we have in Kentucky and see if there's some solutions that we can pull out. So this is really just us asking for them to take a look at it. Again, a task force just studies an issue. So right now we have not seen a bill yet filed to establish that task force, but we're hopeful that somebody will be filing one during the session. And we can encourage folks to just check back with us throughout the session, check KYA's bill tracker, and it will be updated as soon as we see a bill filed on this. Next slide. Okay, and another one that has not yet been filed, but we are hoping to see is some efforts to increase compliance with Tobacco 21 law. So we know that in Kentucky, you have to be 21 to be able to buy tobacco and nicotine products. This includes things like e-cigarettes and vapes. And so we are looking for some ways to identify retailers who are selling those products, getting some more regular compliance checks to make sure that folks are abiding by the law, and then penalizing anyone who is selling to kids or minors. So we again, have not seen a bill filed on this yet. There is a bill trying to address vape and vape shops, those who sell those products, and trying to license those entities, which is part of what we're looking for in terms of being able to enforce the law there. But the bill that's filed doesn't quite meet all of the things that KYA would be looking for, and it also puts some punishments on kids that we don't want to see happening. So right now we don't have a bill filed in terms of this blueprint item. And again, just checking back on our bill tracker in the future to see once something is filed, what we can do next. All right, and this next one is about addressing individuals who are involved in the juvenile justice system in some way. So we are looking for some expanded investments from the state to allow communities to hold kids accountable if they do something that maybe would be behavior that might get them into the juvenile justice system, but looking at ways to address it from the root causes of that behavior and giving them a continuum of care to support them and keep them in their communities, keep them with their families as often as possible. And so this is some budgetary asks to get state investments into those kind of programs. The House budget, and I'll talk a little bit more about budget process in a few minutes, but House Bill 6 is the current state budget proposal that they're working from. So right now we did see some investments in that budget proposal to support the physical and mental health of those who are in the juvenile justice system, and also supporting some alternatives to detention. So that was a positive thing that we saw included in the House budget proposal. And what we'll see happen next is the House and Senate members will come together and deliberate on the budget, lots of different items included in there, and determine a final state budget by the end of the session, which is on, like I said, April 15th. So more to come there, but we did see some positives included in the budget. This next one is finding some ways to support families who have children that they're raising that are relatives or fictive kin. And in Kentucky, kinship care, we talked about that a lot. And so dedicating some state funds to support subsidized permanent custody for those families. And so again, in the House budget proposal, which is House Bill 6, we did see some rate increases for the relative caregiver placement. And they also included sustained investment for the one-time relative placement support benefit. So those are both positive things that we saw in the House budget to support kids who are living in kinship care situations across the state. And again, waiting on the House and Senate to continue deliberating on the budget, and we'll see if what the final amounts are. You can go to the next one. And this next bill is all about supporting kids' mental health. So we know that this has been a huge issue across the state and across the nation in recent years, and it's continuing to come up for lots of kids in Kentucky needing access to mental health care in their communities, in their schools, in order to get all their needs met. And we're looking for some increased investments in mental health care in a couple of different ways. So the first part is to sustain the state funding that goes to our Kentucky schools to support school-based mental health providers. And then the second part is to increase Medicaid reimbursement rates for mental health services that are offered to kids in different settings around the state. So with that being a two-part issue, the first of that is the sustained investments in school-based mental health providers, which we did see the inclusion of that investment in House Bill 6, which is the budget proposal. But what we did not see was any dedicated investment to increasing the Medicaid mental health rates in the budget. So we are still looking for some improvements to hopefully get some of those Medicaid dollars specifically for increasing the rates for mental health providers. And of course, continuing to keep that sustained investment in the mental health providers for schools. You can go to the next one. This next one also applies to making sure that students have a good experience at school, and this is by supporting the teacher pipeline. And one of the ways that we want to see that done is to allow student teachers to be paid for their time in the classroom. So this would be a state budget allocation to give them a stipend for their time when they're student teaching and to help encourage students to stick in that profession and become teachers in Kentucky. So right now we do see that in House Bill 6, there is inclusion of stipends for student teachers, which is really great news. And we also, there does need to be a legislative language change to allow student teachers to be paid for their time. So we expect that if the stipends stay in the budget, that we would have to see that language change to allow for student teachers to be paid. But that's a really positive thing, and we're hopeful that that will help with the student teacher pipeline in Kentucky. Okay, and this next one has to do with ensuring high quality childcare environments to help support all of the working families across Kentucky and also make sure that children have good and safe early childhood learning experiences. So you can see a little bit more detail about what KYA would like to see in terms of childcare investments, because there's a lot that's needed in order to help sustain this system. There's a lot of federal money that came out during the COVID, all the federal legislation during COVID that came down to the states that supported childcare in Kentucky. And a lot of that money ran out in the last several months. And so we're looking for the state to kind of help sustain the investments that are no longer coming from the federal government so that our childcare system in Kentucky can continue to support all the kids who need it and all the families who are working. Unfortunately, we did not see enough of an investment in House Bill 6 in the budget proposal to support the child care system in the way that it needs to be in Kentucky. So we are hopeful to see additional increases included in that state budget before it passes fully in April. So there is still some need for advocacy in this area to have folks talk about why it's so important to support the childcare sector and support early childhood teachers and educators as well. So hopefully we'll see some increased investments there. This next item is addressing maternal health in Kentucky and trying to support moms throughout their pregnancy and their birth. So in order for mothers to have additional choices on where they would like to have their prenatal and delivery care, we are looking to exempt freestanding birthing centers from certificate of need requirements. And so what this would do is just remove some barriers to opening a freestanding birthing center in Kentucky. We don't have any of those right now, and most other states have that type of care available to new moms. So we are looking to change those certificate of need requirements for that. And we actually have 3 different bills filed that would address this issue, which is great news. House Bill 199 and Senate Bill 103 with Representative Nemes and Senator Funky Fromeyer. Those 2 bills are companions, which means that they are the exact same bill language filed in the House and in the Senate. And these are some bills that we've seen in past years as well. So those go into a lot of detail about how freestanding birth centers can be licensed and operate in the state of Kentucky. And both of those have been assigned to committees. In the House, the Licensing and Occupations Committee, and in the Senate, the Health Services Committee. Neither of them have had a hearing yet. And then we also have House Bill 203, which is from Representative Proctor. And that one has not been assigned to a committee yet, but it is a little bit of a more broad bill that addresses certificate of need law for several different types of medical centers, but it includes freestanding birthing centers. So it's a little bit different, but still addresses the same issue. So we are hoping to see these bills get committee hearings in the coming weeks and see some action on those. And again, a good chance to reach out to a House or Senate member who represents you to tell them about the importance of this and talk about why they should be supportive. And go to the next one. All right, so that is, oh, there we go. So that was a quick overview of all the policy priorities that are on the list. A couple of those include budget items, but we also have some additional budget asks and on the blueprint. So I wanted to talk just very briefly about the budget. Every other year, our lawmakers make that 2-year state budget. And so what generally happens is that the governor creates a budget proposal with his recommendations for state investments. And this came out in December. And then it was filed as House Bill 114. So if you're interested in seeing what was included in that, check that out. And then the House releases a budget proposal, and that kind of begins the deliberation process to really get down to what will be included in the final budget, and that is House Bill 6. So you can also check that out, and I believe that there probably is already some links in the chat of checking out KYA's analysis of all those budget documents. So over the next couple of months, we have representatives and senators who will work together to adjust the House budget proposal, make some changes, additions before they get to that final 2-year budget, which will be signed into law and take effect in the summer. You can go to the next one. So just a quick overview. I already mentioned a couple of these things, but there's also a few additional ones that I wanted to point out. A couple of wins that we saw in the current budget proposals are those investments to keep youth out of the juvenile justice system, stipends for student teachers, sustained funding in school-based mental health providers, and some investments in kinship caregivers. Those were all really positive things. Happy to see that included. And then a couple of things we want to point out that we didn't see included in the current budget proposal, but we're hoping to have included is those adequate investments to keep our childcare sector afloat and keep childcare happening in Kentucky. Increasing some funding for tobacco prevention and cessation funding in Kentucky to help folks who are using nicotine products and would like to quit. And then also there is some settlement money that's coming into the state from Juul, which is a vape company that is no longer in existence, but they were marketing to kids and settled a lawsuit. And so Kentucky is getting some money from that. And we were hoping to see that Juul settlement money allocated towards youth prevention and cessation. And unfortunately, we didn't see that included. Again, as I mentioned before, we're looking for increased reimbursement rates for Medicaid mental health providers. And then finally, some investments from the state into the Affordable and Rural Housing Trust funds. So again, getting back to housing sustainability for our kids and families. So a few wins, a few things that are still missing in the state budget that we're hoping to see, and lots of time still to go. So lots of work to do. And these are some ideas for folks to be thinking about what you can do moving forward this week. Talk to your legislators about what you would like to see. So I think that covers a lot about what's happening, where we are today, and we're going to move into a discussion, answer questions, and think about what advocates can do next. So I will pass it back over to Shannon.
Thanks, Alicia. So based on what we heard, would it be okay to take the slide down? Can we just can I see folks' faces so that we can see hands and responses and reactions? I know that Alicia covered a whole lot of information in that presentation, and hopefully that incited some excitement or some curiosity about what you all heard. But any questions that came to mind kind of in the immediate about either any processes or specific priorities that Alicia discussed? And you can drop those in the chat. You can raise your hand. You can unmute yourself. You can do like a little reaction. I'm very comfortable with therapeutic silence. So Do you all feel prepared to maybe talk to or meet with your legislators about any of these options? Do we have folks who have meetings scheduled that they would like to discuss? Theta, would you be willing to talk about who you're meeting with and what about?
Um, Basically just to introduce myself a little bit because I'm new at this, so up and coming kind of advocate sort of thing. But I meet with Senator Max Wise and Representative Amy Neighbors on Wednesday when I'm up there. So just kind of gonna touch base, introduce myself, and let them know I'm up and coming and who I am and what we're here for, that kind of thing. And tell them that I hope to work with them in the future. Hope to see some things that we can get together on and kind of go from there. Amy Neighbors, I actually went to school with her. So
Oh,
I have a
nice.
little bit of a background there. So that kind of helps, her brother and I graduated together. She was a year or two ahead of me. So that kind of makes it a little more comfortable. I've done more research on them. I know where they stand. I know where they're from, who their parents were, that kind of thing. So I've done a little bit of background on them. What's important to them, what was important to them, before they got where they are, that kind of thing. So I feel kind of confident. I'm just meeting them, introducing myself tomorrow. I feel kind of ready for that. So, or on
That's
Wednesday.
awesome. Theta, that's one, that's really courageous that you're taking the time to go meet with your legislators, especially since you're newer to this, but it sounds like you've done your homework, you're feeling really prepared. That is
Yeah,
fantastic, and I'm really glad to hear that. And you're going to be great.
thank you. I hope so.
I see a note in the chat about more consideration of supporting childcare in Kentucky. We know that that is a huge, huge issue for working families, and it is something that creates a lot of protective factors for our families. So, Lynn, I totally agree with you there. Hopefully, we can get the House's budget to be a little bit more in line with where it needs to be in order to really support working families, or at the very least, we see some changes in the Senate. Other questions? Or just like, if you want to talk about like, hey, I'm meeting with so-and-so, do you have any tips? We might be able to provide that as well. Dr. Davis Goodline would love to hear tips. Okay, so just some thoughts that we typically talk about with our advocates during like Advocacy 101 presentations. The first is just remember that your House and Senate members are there to represent you. They work for you, and they are elected by you and your constituents in your district. So ideally, they will be open and ready to get to know you and learn from you. But just remember they're people too, and a lot of them have full-time jobs doing other things that are very different than what they're doing when they're in Frankfurt. Because we have a part-time legislature, we have legislators who work full-time as real estate agents or attorneys or dentists or school teachers. So they've got different backgrounds and different things. So what you're coming to them with, they may not have a lot of information about. So sometimes there's an opportunity to educate about what's going on with the issue, depending on what you're there for. Another really just good kind of like reminder to keep in your head is that a lot of times our legislators are just like people in general, love positive feedback. So if you have noticed that they have done something that's really good for kids and families or really aligns well with your area of focus, make sure that you point that out, because a lot of times our legislators are not hearing that from folks. They're often hearing a lot of complaints, which is that's appropriate too. They need to hear from folks when they are not happy or there's not a lot of alignment, but it's also good to support, like, to be affirming when they do really positive things. When you sit down and talk to them, just remember that their time is pretty limited, especially during the legislative session. And to keep it as concise as possible, if you're taking reading materials, make sure that they're bulleted or there's a kind of a summary of those materials, because they often don't have a lot of time to dig deep and do a lot of reading. What about other advocates who had experience with legislative meetings? You could throw your comments or tips in the chat. Highly recommend a follow-up thank you note, handwritten thank you note, or thank you email.
I would suggest that, I don't know if you can hear me. Can you hear me?
We can, yes.
Okay. I would suggest that when you go in to make sure you have who you're representing to, if you're with a group, because just because you say the names, they may not know who you are or your organization. So making sure you have that background with you, showing who you represent, how many members you have, if you have a group like that, or if you're just representing yourself, I live here, you're my representative, and giving them that piece so they can grab hold of who you are and who you represent really helps them tie the issue to you.
Yeah, Autumn, that is a really, really great suggestion. I'm glad that you brought that up. You're right. They don't know of every group or, organization that has been in this work. So giving them a little elevator pitch on that is good. Also, just remember that this is an opportunity for relationship building. Consider it an ongoing conversation, not just a one-time thing. That relationship building with your legislator is really important, because they, as a constituent, they want to get to know who you are, but also, you want to get to know about them and kind of understand where they're coming from, so that when you later go and talk to them about different things, you can kind of call back to those items. Like, I know that you've been really supportive of childcare issues in the past. Did you know that 15% of whatever? So bringing some of that information back or calling it back to continue to strengthen the relationship can be really important. Ashley Bush says, practice, practice, practice. It really helps to make the meeting a conversation. That's definitely good advice, Ashley. You might go in feeling a little nervous, but sometimes running it through with a friend or partner or your kiddo can be really helpful before you sit down across from your legislator and talk to them about what you're interested in. We do a lot of role playing, with our young people who will practice meeting with their legislator, but really for any age. If I've got any fellow social workers on the call, I know you all have probably spent a lot of time role playing in your programs. So, but it can be definitely helpful. Other tips, questions? Yep. Thanks, Alicia. KYA has fact sheets on all of our blueprint priorities. We'll have copies of those on hand at Children's Advocacy Day. Not a ton. So if you forget to print them out at home, we'll have a couple of those, and then make sure that you reach out and let us know what other questions you have. I'm going to turn it back over to Alicia, who's going to come with a couple more reminders before we close out.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Shannon. Thank you all for joining and listening and asking questions and getting yourself prepared for what's to come this week and beyond during the legislative session. So just a reminder, I think we said it already, but we really are just kicking off Children's Advocacy Week. So there's much more in store for you all throughout the week to tune into and to get engaged. So the first thing is to be sure, and today's a good day to do it because you can go ahead and build your schedule for the rest of the week. We have an app for Children's Advocacy Week. So it is called YAP, which is YAPP. Maybe somebody can put that in the chat for folks. And there's a code CAWKY, so Children's Advocacy Week as an abbreviation, KY. To set that up, you can learn about what's happening throughout the week. You can build your own schedule. You can register if you last minute haven't registered for any of the events and you would like to come. So make sure you do that. And then of course, we hope to see folks at the Capitol on Wednesday. We're going to be hosting our 20th annual Children's Advocacy Day. So that is our big in-person day. We want lots of folks represented at the Capitol that day. We're going to kick it off with a rally for Kentucky's kids at 10 a.m. in the Rotunda. If you've never been before, a good tip is to just arrive a little bit early. Sometimes there's a bit of a line, there's a security checkpoint. So we always have to make sure we get everyone in the building safely. So if you would like to attend the rally, we definitely encourage you to get there a few minutes early before 10 a.m. And then also just if you can't be there in person or you can't attend a lot of stuff throughout the week, you can stay informed with lots of things happening during the legislative session from KYA on our social media. sign up for our newsletter, and stay informed about what's happening today, tomorrow in Frankfurt throughout the session, all kinds of different stuff, as well as just following along throughout the entire session. So again, just thank you all so much for joining us today. Be sure to check out the app and our website and all the things on your screen, and we will hopefully see you all in a couple of days at the Capitol.